the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
We're gonna drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb.
We come to drop the bomb.
Drop the bomb. Open the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, the star of the show.
LaMarr, Darnell, Shields.
It will come as no surprise that the various forms of yoga have long been acknowledged as allies in mastering the mind and coping with stress. Science is increasingly validating those claims, especially for depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Mind-body techniques are difficult to evaluate as treatments because it is not possible to double-blind the clinical trials. But single-blind trials, open-label studies, and studies of comparative responses to mass trauma provide a substantial scientific basis for recommending yoga as treatment. Studies have shown that yoga can have positive benefits for people with several types of mental disorders. Studies have shown that yoga can have positive benefits for people with several types of mental health conditions, including the ones that I mentioned. As the rising popularity of yoga in the U.S. intersects with the international mental health crisis, it's not surprising that researchers are looking to qualify yoga's actual value in promoting psychological well-being. Well, my next guest, Leonora Eubanks, has been teaching therapeutic yoga since 2008. She specializes in adapting yoga practices to a variety of ages, abilities, and communities. Her current work at the treatment at Sheppard Pratt Hospital focuses on empowering patients with yoga techniques for relieving stress, maintaining body and mind balance. She offers gentle yoga classes at the Baltimore Yoga Village and particularly enjoys sharing yoga with young adults on the autism spectrum. She earned 200 hours of therapeutic style yoga certification through Yama Therapeutics, Yoga, Ayurveda, and Meditative Arts, and is continuing her studies in Ayurvedic yoga therapy, trauma-informed yoga, and yoga for mood disorders. Lenora holds an occupational therapy assistant degree from the Community College of Baltimore County, a BA in urban studies from Eastern University, and 10 years of experience in experiential education as an outward bound instructor. Her approach integrates Eastern yoga and Ayurveda and Western occupational therapy and experiential education perspectives with emphasis on adapting yoga movement, breathing, and meditation techniques to each individual's mental and physical state. I would like to welcome my friend and yogi or yoga and meditative guru to the Sound Bombing Studios. Welcome home. So for those that are listening, we are about to get this party started. We have the yogi in the building. Lenora is about to give us some history lessons. She doesn't know that. We're gonna talk about some research that's out there. But I just really wanted to get sort of focused because again, for those that are listening to Sound Bombing, we talk about the word balm, which is a healing of words and music and sounds. I am, for those that don't know, I am an avid meditator. I practice yoga, but not as much as I should, of course. But it sort of gets me centered. So how long have you been practicing yoga? Before we get into your work, how long have you been practicing?
Since 2000.
Since 2000. And what brought you to the practice?
My Baltimore cousin, Jay Fletcher, shout out. She took me, it was a college break after my freshman year of college. She took me to my first yoga class at Limbricks and a Charm City Yoga, I forget which one.
Yeah.
So she took me to a class and, I didn't know what to expect, but I just felt completely different and more relaxed and stretched areas I didn't even know I needed to be stretched.
So let's back up. Before you walked into this class, your cousin, shout out to Limbricks. I love Lynn. She's expanding all over the city. So she introduced you to this class. Before you walk into the class, or when she called you and said, hey, hey, Leonora, I want you to come to yoga class. What was the first thing that popped into your mind? Be honest, like when she said yoga class, what popped into your mind?
What did pop into my mind? I don't know. Something stretching.
What did you think you were going to see once you walked up there?
Oh gosh, 2000 was a long time ago, but
you can't even remember what you ate for breakfast yesterday. Because we have these preconceived notions prior to we going into a space. So when you think of yoga, so you didn't have any thoughts prior to walking in there?
I'm sure I did, but what I remember the most is being excited to just hang out with my cousin.
So she could have been taking you anywhere. Yeah. I love the big cousin, little cousin. So you had no expectations walking in there, but what had you heard of yoga? When prior to her mentioning that name, did you know anything about it?
No, I didn't actually. So it was pretty fresh, and at that time I was pretty open to new experiences, and I really didn't know what I was good. She just something that she did. She enjoys it. She's into exercise, and I was into exercise. So I think it was more along the exercise line of things, like another kind of exercise class.
So you leave the class. Remember, this is 2000. We're talking 18 years ago. You leave the class. What were your thoughts?
That felt amazing. So I remember there's certain areas of my body that felt stretched out. So I had this like shoulder blade tension that I was carrying at the time, and like I remember a forward fold. And like it's called Janu Shirsasana, where you're like leaning over one leg, sitting on your bottom, leaning over one leg. Just remember, really deep stretch that felt so good. Cobra pose felt amazing. Like those combinations, those are the specifics.
So you and I started at the same time.
Oh, really?
So let me tell you my thoughts. Since you want to be nice, let me just tell you my thoughts. That's how I went because of one of my good friends' his wife was saying that he was having high blood pressure. And I'm like, we're too young to have high blood pressure. I said, well, let's practice some yoga. So someone told me about a yoga class. So my thoughts like, they're going to have me on the floor. They're going to have me sweating. So I'm thinking, this is before yoga became this phenomenon that we're going to talk about later on. So I was like, man, what these folks going to have me doing? They're going to have me chanting. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I'm looking on the phone. Of course, didn't have any. I wasn't prepared. Some black folks when they go skiing. They never go skiing, but they got all the ski gear. They got all the ski gear, the shoes. But they're like, I ain't going skiing. So I was not like, I didn't come in like with the latest yoga mat and this that. I just walked up in that piece, man. Had some tennis shoes, some basketball shorts, and was like, yo, I'm just down for it. And David, who actually was the instructor, was freaking amazing. First of all, this whole concept of a yoga one-on-one. There is no yoga one-on-one. As soon as you get into that class. You like down. And for all the guys who like, man, you going to the yoga class and check out the females, hell to the no. You trying to stay so, I was trying to stay so focused. I wasn't looking at anybody at all. And so again, I remember going in there thinking like, man, it's going to be weird. Is it going to be strange? It's going to be this. And everything that you said on the way out the door, is that how I felt? I laid on the floor and the instructor at the time, his name was David as well. He said, this is going to be the best legal high that you ever get. That's
right. Yes.
And not to talk about my history because I know what that other part feels like. But again, the best legal high. And I laid on that floor and people were gone. He was like, okay, you can get up. And ever since then, I was connected. I was addicted. My buddy David, who went with me, man, we went consistently. We loved it. And so again, it was a life changer for me for the work that I'm doing because I'm all over the place. People are talking about how do you remain healthy? How do you remain energized? Yoga and meditation was one of those things. So since Leonora didn't want to give me her version of it, I'm going to tell you the hood version, the boy from the south side of Chicago. I walked up in there ill prepared, didn't know, had all the wrong equipment. And the beautiful part, there's really no equipment that you actually need. It's just having sort of a peace of mind. So what's one of the strangest things that anybody has ever asked you about yoga? Like, what's one of the strangest questions that anybody's ever asked you?
Strangest questions.
We're not talking about the group of friends that you hang around now. We're talking about some other folks from like other walks of life before you start practicing, or just people who. We're going to get into your work at Sheppard Pratt. We're going to talk about what Sheppard Pratt means and the type of work. But what's one of the strangest questions people ever ask you? Or assumptions?
Assumptions. I don't know if it's strange, but I get this a lot. So it's the question that's in my mind. It's like, do I have to be flexible to do yoga? An assumption. You have to come to yoga already.
Girl, that's the strangest thing somebody asked you. Do you have to be flexible? Come on, that was one of my. Come on, somebody didn't ask you. one of your cousins from the hood who like my cousin is on the yoga mat. What's something beyond that? Because we're gonna get to those, but something just out of the box, like
Yeah. I mean,
did anybody ever ask you, could you levitate?
Oh yeah, but they're joking when they ask that question.
Who's joking? Probably they don't really know, do they?
I don't know, but I mean, maybe there's some seriousness to it. Maybe they're joking. But
so when no one has ever asked you any of the out of the box questions outside of just being
I'm
flexible.
Sure they have, but
you just block them out.
I guess
See, you're
so.
doing yoga and meditation is really because you blocking out a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe I ain't there yet. Maybe eventually I will get to that. So what's the difference between yoga and exercise, and is there a difference?
Yes, there is.
What's the difference?
Exercise, it's very much focused on just building. It's there's not a spiritual component to exercise necessarily. Okay. I mean, you can make it that, I guess, but the intention of yoga is to connect us to something that's beyond our physical and mental self, right? So the higher power, whatever you call it, the divine light, yoga kind of refers to this quality of light that is within, like our soul, it's within our heart, and everything like that. So the intention is to work out any tension and things that we've taken up, like that. Just recognizing that mentally, our physical body takes on what we are experiencing mentally and emotionally, and so it gets held in our body. And so if we're not balancing that out by exercising, releasing the energy, stretching, strengthening, then it all builds up. And so when we're able to move our body and relax our body, when we're able to do practices that help our mind be a little stiller, then we can be in the state of meditation more consistently throughout our everyday. Because meditation isn't just sitting on a cushion, right?
Indeed.
It's like being able to take it through each moment of the day.
And that's interesting. You talked about spirit. Now, of course, I got to talk with two people of color right here. Mm-hmm. When you talk about religion, when you talk about yoga, you got many people in many of the black churches who are denouncing yoga. Yeah. Some people are denouncing meditation, and if Christians really read scripture, Jesus meditated.
Yeah,
he rode with the disciples, but he's like, these yogas don't really get what I'm trying to portray. So I had to roll out to the mountain and meditate and do those things. So what do you have to say to those individuals who are like, I heard you talk about spirit. I go to the black church. And I know you went to a Christian school.
I did.
Did you sort of struggle with that as well? So let's talk about meditation and the black church. Some people against it, and then also let's talk about where you sort of came from, your background coming from a Christian school, and then now approaching meditation. And then clear up this whole thing. Yoga is not religion, and so on and so forth. I know I asked a couple of questions, but in any particular order.
But that's exactly it. Yoga is not a religion. It's a practice that you can apply to whatever your traditional faith is, right? Whether it's Islam or Christianity or Buddhism. Well, technically, some people say Buddhism isn't a religion either, but it's a philosophy. Yoga is a philosophy. And Jesus, I consider Jesus a yogi, like one of the great yogis, right? So he was praying and meditating, and and yoga doesn't have to even include the postures. So we have like 8 components to yoga, physical movements, the breath work, something called sensory withdrawal, and then you have like philosophical principles. So you can approach yoga in many different ways. You can approach yoga just through the concentration techniques of sitting and focusing your mind. So it doesn't have to be movement. So meditation in the church, I mean, I consider meditating a form of listening to God, whereas praying, I think of a conversation with God. And so I find that personally, that meditation takes it has really expanded my relationship with God. It's not just like me apologizing and repenting and asking for forgiveness and asking for just sharing my heart and everything like that. It's also being able to truly receive and hear God's voice, right? And hear that light that's within us, and recognizing that God lives in us, and it's not just this big deity outside of ourselves. Now that can get into like, different churches believe different things.
Yeah, there's a huge debate about that.
Yeah, and so,
So what about your background? You went to a Christian school. Was there some type of clash between sort of where you came from your background, your faith, and even maybe some pushback from your family members as it relates to that?
Yeah. Yes. So I got into yoga while I was in college. After my freshman year, I came home to Baltimore because I was in Philly. So I came home to Baltimore, and my cousin introduced me to yoga, and then
I'm liking this cousin more and more. She just put you down.
She's
Go ahead.
awesome. Yeah. So I got some Rodney yoga tapes and was doing them in my dorm room. And I had an awesome roommate, and she tolerated me getting up at like 5 a.m. and doing some yoga on the floor. It was a really small room.
Yeah, see, you didn't go to a historically black college. It went down for that.
No,
yeah.
right.
We were not down. Sister girl, like, you better take
Right.
your ass back to sleep. That chanting, that yoga. You see this hair? I got to get this hair. Yeah, that's what happens when you go to HBCUs, and I love them because I'm a graduate of one of them.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so I got into it. So I was continuing my practice there. But down the line, as I started to get more and more into it, I would get into conversations. I wanted to become a yoga teacher. And when I would tell, especially like...
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, especially when I tell my black friends at the Christian college, especially, they were like more conservative and more fundamental, Pentecostal, you know.
What were their thoughts when you told them you're practicing yoga?
They thought like
you were the devil. Were they throwing holy water on you?
they put hands on me, prayed for me. They thought they were concerned.
For those that are listening, put hands in this thing is not fighting. Okay, real.
Right.
Putting hands.
Right.
They put their hands on you. Somebody listen, you should have smacked them back. No, they prayed. They put hands on you because they thought the devil was inside of you because you were introduced to them or you were part of another practice.
Yeah, because they had heard that. I guess maybe this is a weird question, but they had heard that.
See, I knew it was going to come out. You trying to be all shy the first 5 minutes. Now you open it up. What did they say? What did that girl say?
Yeah, they believe that some of the postures were a form of worshiping other deities because they are some of the postures are named after gods and gods.
Now you look at the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school. You talking about deities? All these statues.
Yeah,
come on now.
Interesting correlation.
Very.
Yeah.
Wow. So they challenge you on that.
Yeah.
And what was your response? Do you remember your response, or were you prepared for the response, or?
I just remember saying like, well, that's not my experience. You know, I don't feel like I'm inviting in some spiritual form that I don't relate to. It actually helps me feel more spiritually connected.
And so you started having these conversations at a very young age about sort of where your thinking was progressing from being at this. Was it a Catholic Christian school, Christian college?
It was like Eastern Baptist.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Them shouting Baptist boy, they hit you with some Bibles and everything.
Yeah. But I mean, people there were from all denominations.
Yeah.
So
did you get any converts? Did you convince anybody else to roll with you?
You know, so they didn't. So at that time, because this is still early 2000s, there weren't a lot of yoga classes, especially not. It was out in the suburbs of just outside of Philly, and so there weren't. I didn't know of any yoga classes in the area. There certainly weren't any on my college campus. So it was just me and the yoga tapes.
Man, you hardcore by yourself.
So so no one else. I tried to convince people to try it, but they would just laugh at me because he was in a Speedo and everything. So
you needed some better tape. Let me see. What were you watching that yoga? Was it really yoga or something else you were checking out on that tape?
It was good eye candy.
Staying focused though while you down there. So let's talk about things are shifting. We're going to get to your current work. Why do you think yoga is becoming so popular? First of all, the clothes, Lululemon, whoever, man, they getting paid. Just think if you would have started this in 2000, them yoga pants, man, them little white women being there spending all that money, $150 for some Lululemon, making a killing. Hopefully they'll sponsor our show eventually. But why all of a sudden yoga is becoming so popular? And is it a fad? I think about fad hip hop. I think about I'm a vegan. Fad, veganism. You know, is it a fad? And why is it becoming so popular right now?
I do think there's a genuine, like, people realize that this makes me feel really good. So I do think that's consistent. I don't, as far as it being a fad, I mean, so it's got a lot of components to it, right? So you do build strength, you do build flexibility. It's not really a cardio workout, though. It might seem that way when you're doing hot yoga, right?
First of all, I did a hot yoga class in Indiana.
Oh, wow.
Let me just tell you, if hell feels like anything like that, I need to change my life right now. because that hot yoga class, like when you in it, when it's over, man, it is the best feeling. But I will never do that yoga again.
Right.
That's like once a month that you do for yourself.
Right.
And I was in there with one of my girls from elementary school that I grew up with. So I'm in there like trying to keep it together. I hadn't seen her in years, let her know. And I still got my parts still moving. Man, I was in there not doing a good job. And then they had like water. They wouldn't let you do these breaks. So then I'm trying to be hardcore. Like, should I take a water break? That show my weakness right there. So all this stuff is going on. I'm like, no, I need that water break. So the hot yoga is
it's
a
not
killer.
for everybody.
But it is amazing. The feeling that you get when it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing. But we talked the fad. You said you like the fact that people is making people feel good. My concern is that whenever capitalism gets involved, and I joke Lululemon and all these other places, that becomes a concern to me.
Yeah,
just like being a vegan, whenever capitalism puts its ugly face out there, then things start to shift. I think of hip hop music. I use hip hop as an example. Listen to some old music, some interviews. They're like, oh yeah, in 80 so and so, it was going to be a fad. But you're not seeing it as a fad. But you know, what do we say about how when capitalism just jumps on board and just runs with it?
Yeah, and they're kind of the capitalism piece, like Lululemon definitely pushes it more of like an exercise, a workout. The hot yoga kind of emphasizes that even, and so I think as part of that element, you know, that's the part that sells. That's what gets men, I think, in the door, that they're getting like a good workout. That's from at least motivation. But
are you excited that the direction the yoga is going, that there are more people are practicing yoga?
I am, and I just hope that they're being introduced to all the components, right? The meditative aspect, because a lot of classes just focus on asana, which means posture. Are they getting introduced to the breath work, which is just as powerful? Are they getting introduced to the body scanning, concentration techniques, meditation? That's really what you're able to carry with you from moment to moment when you're not able to go to your mat and recalibrate. And so
let's talk about some components. What are the very specific components to practicing yoga? I know they're very different forms, but what are some of the components and some of the forms?
Different components. Breath work is important. So breath work is kind of like we started in the beginning. That's called diaphragmatic breathing into the belly. We often are breathing shallowly in our upper part, the thoracic area. So we want to start there. That's the basic. And then there's also like alternate nostril breathing, which is good for reducing anxiety. And then we have energizing exercises like breath of joy or Kapalabhati or Bhastrika that really is a faster paced breath that gets the energy moving. So if you're depressed or just feeling low in energy, that's a good way to recalibrate as well. But so that's breath work. But as far as the different forms of yoga, it's all hatha yoga, right? But vinyasa is a form of hatha yoga. Vinyasa just means that you're connecting one posture to the other, and the pace of it can change. So the hot yoga classes, I think they tend to go a little faster. Power yoga, but hatha tends to be a more traditional approach. Shivananda, if you're familiar with that term, Shivananda. Satyananda. But I also love arm balances, like crow pose is one of my favorites. It's very empowering, and there's a lot of ways to build on that, you know. So how does one go about choosing a yoga instructor? So if I'm new to yoga and I want to find an instructor, what are some of the questions that I might be asking or I should ask an individual? Yeah. I think it's important that every yoga teacher is able to adapt towards the individual. Yoga is intended, it was originally taught individually, not in a class. And it wasn't until it was brought to the West, actually, that they started teaching group. Yoga is a therapeutic experience naturally. So the fact that saying yoga therapy is actually redundant. Originally, it wasn't just exercise, it's a form of therapy. So being able to adapt the postures to what it's not about trying to put somebody in this cookie cutter position. Okay, we have to force you to look a certain way based on like what my teacher looked like, or what I look like, or what some diagram.
And that's what's interesting when you go to yoga classes, just like marathons. I run a marathon.
Yeah.
You see all shapes and sizes. You see people being flexible. Some people being challenged. Some people can do better poses than others.
Right.
So I am excited that I'm seeing more people, in particular, not to disrespect another group of people, but I'm excited to see more people of color, because again, we are living these stressed out lives.
Yeah.
We're dealing with so much, and we think that because we have technology that exists, things changing. But again, technology breeds this other issue because now we're so connected to it, we don't take time to move away from it. I mean, there's tons of research on Facebook depression, when people are looking at Facebook and they look at other people's lives and comparing their lives.
Right.
And so yoga is a great way to do that. I introduced it to a group of boys of color. I remember it was like, you can't get these Black Latino boys to sit still. And of course, my intellectual arrogance said I could. After 5 sessions, I did.
Yeah.
But again, I was introducing something new to them. So I'm constantly, when I'm going into my lectures or talks or workshops, we do this centering. And some people find it strange. You know, a lot of times I don't tell people to close their eyes. I tell them to find a place in the room to focus on. And speaking of that type of work, working with a variety of people, let's talk about your work at Sheppard Pratt, because there's a body of research out there around children with different abilities or what some people call disability, schizophrenia, adults that you work with, autism. Tell them what Sheppard Pratt is, first of all, so people can understand. And then let's talk about your work with using yoga for people with mental health issues. So what is Sheppard Pratt?
Sheppard Pratt Health System, it's a mental health house. A lot of residential crisis, they might just, to be admitted into the hospital, there usually is some level of crisis. So they work with all ages. They have, children's units. They have for behavioral issues. They have schools. The MAN RTC. They have eating disorder units, trauma units, crisis.
So let's talk about your work. What are you doing? How are you using yoga? Because again, when you talk about folks with mental health issues and introducing them to yoga, how are they responding? And how did you start? How did you approach it? How did you get introduced to this work, rather?
Yeah, through my teacher training. The way I got introduced to yoga and mental health is my teacher training was a therapeutic training, and so they asked us, okay, what population do you want to serve? How do you want to bring yoga into your community? And mental health is something that's affected my family for a long time, and so I've seen how the stress that it can cause on the caregivers and on the people who are suffering in my family from mental illness, and wanting to use alternative approaches besides just medicine, because a lot of the focus is on medication management, just adjusting medications. Medications have a place and can be helpful, but sometimes people are over-medicated, reliance on it. And so the retreat at Sheppard Pratt is actually right now, hopefully that will change in the future, but right now it's the only unit that is integrated, where it is integrating yoga therapy, integrating acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, recreation, working along with the psychiatrist and social psychotherapy treatment and medication. And they are so appreciative. I mean, that's it.
So who's appreciative? The patients? Okay.
Yeah, the patients.
So do you approach a schizophrenic patient different from a traditional yoga student of yours? And if so, how do you engage them? What does that process look like?
Yeah. So I should say that also that all of us kind of suffer from some form. So schizophrenia is a little more intense, but like depression, anxiety, all of us kind of have those qualities. We're working with those on a daily basis, right? And what differentiates you from needing to be in the house, admitted to the hospital. So in the hospital, so for instance, working with schizophrenic patients, you want to bring them back to their body, back to a form of reality. Your physical body is very real, and so I tend to avoid things that encourage like delusional thinking. Like sometimes we do guided visualization, so that's something I wouldn't do with someone with schizophrenia, because that might promote them getting lost in their head in that way. So very eyes open, just bringing them back to what's actually happening right here and now. Your hands are on the floor for this position. Your feet are on the floor. What is your body actually feeling? Because a lot of times they feel disconnected from their physical body, like they can't name the sensation. Your body's doing something, so of course it's feeling something, but not always able to be in tune with it, sense it right away, or being able to name it.
What are some things that you're learning from that population that you might miss out on from a traditional yoga class? Anything that you're learning about that group that you're working with, the folks that are dealing with these disorders?
That I might miss out on from a traditional.
Yeah, are there anything that you're noticing about how they approach the practice as compared to, let's just say you and I do a yoga practice?
As people with schizophrenia and anyone who has psychotic symptoms, which is also, that can also be bipolar, and especially on the lean more towards the manic end of the spectrum, they tend to be very sensitive to the spiritual element of yoga. Like when we talk about the chakras and the energy, the subtle body is what we call it. It's something that we all kind of sense about ourselves. When we're praying, but however we spiritually, they are so in tune with it. And
isn't that interesting how that, like when you look at, so again, we're working with a district in St. Louis, it's called the Special School District. And I look at the kids with autism, Asperger's, those on the autism spectrum, these other disorders, they have all these other gifts that we haven't tapped into, like even memory from numbers and being connected to this other world. And we try to label it as crazy and insane. Right. But then sometimes I'm wondering, there's another universe that exists that we may not be privy to, that they're existing. So to hear that you say that when it comes to this other world that they're sort of connected to, and I think it has a lot to do with sort of how you approach it. Because again, if you didn't have this yoga background, if you were just a researcher, if you were just a psychologist or a therapist who doesn't do this, then you're going to go up to the DSM-4 and look at find an issue. You're going from a spiritual practice, and that's when you talk about finding a perfect, or not a perfect, finding the most appropriate yoga instructor, depending on what you're looking for. That's what I would want to hear, because again, you're looking beyond their sickness or their illness. And I like that you said that we all have something. We all are addicted to something. We all have these discursive thoughts that are in our mind. But to hear you say that you notice that their connection is much greater, says a lot. It really does.
It's very fascinating.
Because the brain is amazing. My friend Shanka, who works at NPR, wrote a book called The Hidden Brain. I encourage you to pick it up. An amazing book, The Hidden Brain. Yeah, so he has a book also.
Oh, okay.
And so again, I'm just blown away with how powerful and also how limiting our brain is. I know we think the brain can do more than it can, but it also has some limits, like just dropping, what I call this deletion device. Like, we have all the stimuli, but our brain wants to drop that, because if not, you'll be trying to pay attention to everything that's around you.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people with mental illness, that's what the issues are. So we got all this stuff on the table, but you see them, but you're not paying attention to them. Could you imagine trying to pay attention to all the stuff?
Right.
And I'm hearing you say with yoga, you're sort of helping them to become more centered in their body, in their space. So how do you prepare for a typical class at Sheppard Pratt? Like what do you do to prepare yourself on a daily basis prior to you? Because prior to you walking, I love to hear the people we invite on here. We talk about routines, and everyone has a different routine. What is your morning routine? Not going to your typical yoga class, but let's just say going to Sheppard Pratt. So what's your morning routine look like?
Preparation for especially.
So when you wake up in the morning, walk us through your typical routine.
When I wake up, I usually am doing some stretches in bed, actually, because that helps me get my joints moving, especially in this weather. Well, today's a little warm, but in the cold weather, so there's something called a joint rotation sequence that I might do a little bit of. And then I like to meditate first thing, whether it's just 5 or 10 minutes, depending on the time frame.
So you're not touching your cell phone, right? You're not grabbing a cell phone.
Well, my alarm clock.
Yeah, besides that, because most people grabbing a cell and they become reactionary.
Right.
So you start with the stretches, meditation, walk us through something else.
Breathing, and then I'll either go straight to at least a sun salutation for my yoga practice, or if it's I do a workout every other day, 3 days a week. So I lift weights, so I'll go to, and then then I'll do my yoga routine.
So have you noticed, does your day seem to be different if you miss one of those steps?
Oh my God, yes.
So routines are important.
Very important, yeah. And that's part of, at Sheppard Pratt, that's the advantage of being in a residential unit. You can get them back on a healthy routine. And that's why it's so great that they have a health and wellness component where we can help them, not only organize their physical fitness, but also integrate meditation and centering practices, but also nutrition is so vital too. So I'm always starting my day with a smoothie, I'm starting a day with like some oatmeal, something. And then if I don't start my day with the healthy food,
but you can feel the different if you don't.
Oh my God, yes.
So what message do you have for busy people out there? We work with busy people. I work with CEOs, principals, superintendents who are constantly on the go. What message do you have for them out there? And then are there any apps that you can suggest for busy people to help their day move much better?
Yeah, 5 to 10 minutes makes a difference. You'd be surprised how just taking a moment, breathing, focusing on your breath at the nostrils will center you. I mean, I think maybe sometimes we underestimate the power of just those little time. Maybe we think like, if I don't do this full hour, it's not going to be worth it. But no, 5 to 10 minutes is worth it. And then Headspace is a popular app. A lot of my patients enjoy that. Pacifica is another one, and that's great for especially if you know that you have some form of mood disorder or mental illness. Because you can base it on if you're track when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling anxious, and then they give you specific meditations to help you develop new coping skills.
So any suggestions for any parent that might be listening whose their child may be dealing with some type of disorder and they want to get some more information about yoga, meditation, any ideas, any way you can direct them at all?
Oh gosh, for children specific.
Any websites you can think of? Because I know you mentioned anything for children.
Not off the top of my head.
But what about for the adults? People who are taking care of older folks who are dealing with some disorders, who they want to get their adult into maybe a meditation or yoga class.
A yoga class. Okay, so there's yoga studios in the area, and yoga studios offer classes for kids and adults. So there's that.
So when they call, should they say, is it okay to bring in, I have a person with special need? Are there any questions that they might ask specifically for a population that may be dealing with a disability or something?
For people with disabilities, there are specific classes like yoga for anxiety and depression, yoga for trauma, trauma-informed yoga, specific questions, I think it's not that different from anyone else. Everyone's bringing something, to the table, to the yoga mat where, they need they have some special requests. So just talking with the teacher, telling them what your situation is, if they think, and they'll be able to support you. I don't think it's that different than anyone else, really.
Okay.
But yes, there's yoga studios in the area. There's also, if you want to practice it on your own and get a taste of it, there's websites and lots of yoga videos. So like the Himalayan Institute is one of my favorites, where they have a lot of good resources on like the full spectrum of what yoga is and offers, and then you have videos that you can explore and a lot of therapeutic videos.
What are some of the misconceptions of yoga and or meditate? Let's just focus on yoga. What are some misconceptions or some myths that you probably want to just debunk right now about yoga?
Yeah. Yoga helps you to become flexible. You don't have to be flexible. You start the practice. People are often intimidated by the physical aspect of yoga. You're not going to be standing on your head first thing. You're not going to be levitating first thing. Maybe eventually you'll get there. But yoga can meet you where you are. It's there's something for everyone. And you don't have to do everything in a yoga class, especially if you're just getting into it. Teachers are often very good at just saying, do what you can. I think sometimes we live in a competitive world. We're in a group. We see other people doing things. We feel we have to do everything someone else does. But if you do a few postures and then you just decide to lay down on your mat, you are still doing yoga because you're being present in your body, breathing. You are centering. You don't have to be doing a crazy position. You are doing yoga if you are, when you're talking to someone and you're, listening to them, but also paying attention to your own breath, paying attention to your own responses to that person, being able to kind of step outside of yourself and see observe yourself, from a distance. Observers.
This is a part of the show that I love. This is my favorite part of the show where I ask what I call the super bomb questions. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. What's your favorite word?
The first word that pops in my head is onomatopoeia.
What,
That's the first
what you
thing that
learned
popped
at your
in.
third grade
Probably.
language arts class? I love that. That's a great word. I love that word. We're going to stick there. I love that word.
cool word.
What's your favorite sound?
Favorite sound? The birds in nature.
What's your superpower?
Superpower. People are often saying my voice is very soothing.
I'm over here like, la, la, la. What's your animal spirit?
Animal spirit. I've always been drawn to wildcats. So lions,
Wildcats.
tigers. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What's the one book that you recommend or you give away to just friends in your network that you're constantly recommending or giving away?
Yeah. Well, most recently, in the past, it's been like the Eckhart Tolle book, on Earth. But most recently, one of my favorite yoga students, shout out to he gave me a book called Mindset.
What's an unusual habit or observed thing that you love that nobody knows?
Unusual habit.
An unusual habit
Unusual
or something that you love that people may not know.
Oh, I traction my spine all the time.
You what?
Self-traction my spine.
How do you self-traction your spine all the time?
I like push down into my thighs and lengthen up. It's like, what the chiropractors do, but I do that on my own, really just throughout the whole day.
That is interesting.
Randomly.
So if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
You are more than you think.
And tell them what your other passion and love is. You like to do what?
Oh,
dance.
dance,
What type of
yes.
dancing do you like to do?
Lindy Hop primarily. Lindy Hop is a form of jazz dance. It's very athletic. There's a lot of aerials. It was created by us, Black people. You wouldn't know that maybe by the way it's, who's into it today, but we're trying to change that. It's a form of swing dance. It started in Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance. So big band era swing, Ella Fitzgerald.
And you said like in the movie Malcolm X.
Yeah, that's
Malcolm
how I
X was
first got
dancing.
into it. Yeah, I first was introduced to it. Malcolm X is a beautiful dance scene. Not beautiful, it's like incredible, exciting dance scene. Norma Miller is one of the great Lindy Hoppers, original Lindy Hoppers. Helped choreograph that.
So that's what Denzel was doing, huh?
Yeah, that's what Denzel was doing. Zoot suits, those colorful suits with the big hats.
Yeah.
And Spike Lee. Yeah, they were killing it in that part of the movie. And that's what when I saw that I was like, oh, what is that? I want to do that.
One more question for you. What does the word soul mean to you? When you hear the word soul, what does that mean?
Soul. The word soul is like who you are. I think it's like the essence of who you are. It's like beyond our physical labels, our mental labels, beyond this physical existence. It's when our body is gone, I feel like our soul continues. And in some way, I don't know how. I think we all have our theories. Different religions have their theories, and but it's the essence of who you are. It's what you bring.
Is that what yoga does to you or bring out of you?
Yes, it does. Yoga brings, or it doesn't. I don't know if it brings it out or it reconnects you because it's always there. It's like it's never gone. It's just we get distracted from recognizing that that the power, I guess you can say, that love and compassion and all these positive qualities that we're constantly striving for are in a part of our soul. It's like our innate nature. So that can get real philosophical. People can debate that, but that's what yoga teaches, and it's what I find to be true.
It's a great way to end the show. How can people get in contact with Leonora Eubanks?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at my yoga.
You do have a very soothing voice, which I think is perfect for what you're doing. I want to thank you for doing the work that you're doing, especially the work that you're doing at Sheppard Pratt, working with that population of people with those different abilities that people tend to label and have a stigma. And the fact that you said that you see it or saw it in your family, you want to do something different with it. And not over medicate. There's a great book I read out called Mindfulness, and one of the questions it says to medicate or to meditate. And so I'm glad that you are in that particular area. So let me thank you again for joining us at the Bomb Shelter. I also want to thank my producer Darius Wilmore and Supremacy for our theme music, and to all of my listeners. And always believe that something wonderful is about to happen, and some people miss the message. because they're too busy looking for the mess. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Sound Bombing.